Hello there, my sleepy fellows. It's good to have you here tonight. The world beyond your window has quieted now. The last whispers of the evening breeze have softened. The glow of lanterns has faded in the gentle hills, and Middle Earth leans quietly into sleep. There's no need to rush now. Just close your eyes if you wish. Let your thoughts slow, and I'll guide you softly into a forgotten corner of this world, a place whispered of in old tales, tucked beyond the familiar paths of hobbits and kings. We begin not with grand battles or ancient lords, but with the Sea of Belegaer, vast, deep, and full of secrets, stretching far beyond the western shores, past Numenor's sunken ruins, past the gray havens, beyond even the reach of elven ships, to a place almost lost to memory. A place of forgotten isles, scattered like quiet jewels upon the endless waves, where the songs of old still drift upon the tides, and where gentle footsteps may yet uncover what time left behind. And so, we begin. Drift softly with me now as we leave the quiet hills of the Shire and the familiar valleys behind, and let our thoughts wander westward, far across the endless blue. Beyond the shores of Middle-earth lies a stretch of sea so vast, so ancient, that even the oldest songs hesitate to speak its full truth. The Sea of Belegaer, called the Sundering Seas by the elves, a restless, rolling expanse that carries the whispers of forgotten ages upon its waves. It is said that beyond those waters, beyond the reach of mortal maps and careful sailors, lie isles untouched by time. Isles lost to the world, scattered like forgotten dreams across the western horizon. Some say they sank beneath the waves. Others believe they drift still, shrouded in mist, hidden by enchantments older than the sun. Tonight, in the quiet safety of this tale, we shall journey there, not with ships or sails, but with gentle steps upon forgotten shores, with steady hearts and wondering eyes. There is no danger here, no storms to fear, only the soft unfolding of mystery, the gentle uncovering of what the world has set aside, waiting for curious souls to find. We will meet a quiet soul drawn by the sea's distant song, follow their footsteps across peaceful shores and ancient paths, and together we will listen for the land's forgotten stories, hidden softly beneath moss, stone, and salt-laced winds. If you enjoy these calm wanderings through Middle-earth, through its hidden corners and whispered histories, I invite you to stay a while longer, like subscribe, or drift into one of our other sleepy tales when your heart is ready. But for now, breathe deep. The sea is calling, and the forgotten isles wait, quiet and patient, beneath the stars. Our story follows a quiet man named Edrin, not a warrior, not a prince, just a gentle soul with a heart made for wondering. Edrin lived at the edge of the world, or as close to it as most folk dared settle. His home rested upon the far western coast of Middle-earth, where the hills roll down into the sea and the waves whisper old songs against the rocky cliffs. His cottage was simple, stone and wood, its roof low, tucked snug against the hillside, as though the land itself had cradled it there. Wild rosemary and creeping vines climbed the walls, and the narrow windows framed a constant view of the endless blue, the Sea of Belegaer stretching beyond sight, its tides steady, its secrets patient. Edrin was not one for bustling towns or crowded gatherings. He preferred quiet hours by the hearth, evenings spent watching the waves roll and break, mornings walking the shore, listening to the gulls cry and the wind hum softly through the grasses. Tall and slender, with hair as dark as weathered driftwood and eyes the soft gray of storm clouds at rest, he carried with him the quiet of the sea, the same patient, thoughtful calm that the tides have always known. But for all his peace, there lived within him a gentle longing. It stirred most often at twilight, when the sun melted into the western horizon, casting the waves in molten gold, when the stars blinked awake and the distant line where sea met sky blurred into mystery. On those evenings, Edrin would stand upon the cliff's edge, gaze westward, and wonder. The old stories spoke of hidden things beyond the waves, isles forgotten by time, lands untouched by mapmakers, places veiled in mist where the songs of the Eldar still drifted upon the breeze. Some said it was foolishness, sailors' talk, the fanciful dreams of those who stare too long at the sea. But Edrin, he listened to the longing that tugged quietly beneath his ribs. He heard the hum in the wind, saw the shimmer upon the water, felt the gentle pull that whispered there was more, waiting just beyond. And soon he would follow that whisper, not in search of riches or glory, but for the simple, quiet need to know, to see, and to remember what the world had nearly forgotten. The days upon the western coast of Middle-earth passed like the steady tides themselves, calm, unhurried, full of small, quiet joys. Edrin's cottage clung to the grassy slope above the cliffs, the stones weathered smooth by sea winds, the roof patched neatly with driftwood and woven reeds. In the mornings, pale sunlight filtered through his narrow windows, casting soft golden patterns upon the wooden floor. The sea greeted him each day with its low, endless song, the waves curling and retreating across the rocky shore below, their white foam sparkling beneath the rising sun. Edrin woke early, as he always had. His kettle hung gently over the hearth, the fire crackling low, warming the cool morning air. The scent of steeping herbs filled the cottage, sea salt mingling faintly with rosemary and mint from his small garden outside. After tea and bread, he would set about his quiet tasks. His garden, though stubborn beneath the salty winds, offered him enough: patches of rosemary, thyme, and hardy sea kale, their leaves green and crisp despite the rocky soil. Beside the garden, weathered nets hung to dry, though Edrin was no fisherman by trade. He caught only what was needed: small fish, mussels along the shore, his heart too gentle to wrestle with the deeper sea's bounty. But most of his days were spent walking. The cliffs stretched far along the coast, their edges carved by time into gentle slopes and sharp outcrops. Paths meandered along their tops, some known, others forgotten, their grasses soft underfoot, their edges dotted with wildflowers that clung bravely to the rocky soil. Edrin walked them all, his pace steady, his eyes always drifting westward, to the sea to the horizon that shimmered beneath the sun. The townsfolk in the nearby village often called him a dreamer. They meant no harm. Many were fond of him, after all. But they didn't understand the pull that stirred quietly beneath his calm exterior. At twilight, when the sun dipped low, painting the sky in shades of rose and lavender, Edrin often stood alone upon the highest cliff, his cloak wrapped gently around him, the sea breeze tugging at its edges. It was then, in those still, quiet moments, that the longing whispered loudest. But it wasn't only longing that stirred now. Small, subtle things had begun to change. The flowers upon the cliffs bloomed out of season, their delicate petals unfolding beneath the pale moonlight as though kissed awake by forgotten hands. The gulls, ever watchful, circled higher in the sky, their calls carrying strangely, as if echoing from a distant shore unseen. And sometimes, when the breeze drifted from the west, a faint hum threaded through the air, soft, melodic, like the distant whisper of voices carried upon the waves. Edrin first thought it a trick of the wind, but as the days passed, the hum grew clearer, not louder, but unmistakably present. It wasn't a song, not one sung by mortal tongues, but something older, woven through the sea and the stone, threading gently through the grasses at his feet. The townsfolk didn't speak of it. Perhaps they didn't hear it at all. But Edrin listened, and with that listening came curiosity. He found himself wandering farther along the cliffs, tracing paths forgotten by most, his eyes drawn to carvings etched faintly upon weathered stones, symbols old and worn, their lines softened by time, yet still whispering of careful, ancient hands. One evening, as the first stars blinked gently awake in the vast sky, Edrin paused by one such stone, a tall, narrow pillar half buried in the earth, its surface overgrown with moss and lichen. But beneath the green, the faint patterns remained, curling lines, delicate knots, and the unmistakable image of a ship, its sails full, its bow pointed west. Edrin's fingers traced the stone's surface, the moss cool and damp beneath his touch. The hum threaded softly through the air again, rising faintly as the sea breeze brushed past him. And in that moment, beneath the fading light, with the sea whispering at his back, Edrin felt it, not fear, not urgency, but a quiet, steady pull, a soft longing woven with something older. It was as though the cliffs themselves remembered, as though the stones held echoes of forgotten footsteps, as though the sea called. The days that followed were filled with the same quiet routines, tending the garden, walking the shore, preparing simple meals by the hearth, but beneath them, that quiet tug remained. It settled just beneath his ribs, not an ache, but a patient invitation. And though the world appeared unchanged, the sun rising, the waves rolling, the gulls circling high, Edrin knew something was beginning. The sea had whispered before, but now it was waiting. The days upon the western cliffs unfolded quietly, but beneath their peace, wonder stirred. It began, as most quiet mysteries do, with the sea. Edrin had walked the cliffs for years, watching the tides shift, listening to the endless murmur of waves upon rock, the cries of gulls carried upon the wind, the patterns of the land, the song of the sea. These were familiar things. But now, small, subtle changes rippled through that familiar world. It started with the light. One evening, as the sun melted low upon the horizon and the waves turned molten gold, Edrin noticed it, a faint shimmer hovering at the edge of the cliffs. Not the bright, brazen light of day, but something softer, stranger. A silvery glow drifted between the grasses, curling along the rocks like moonlight come to life. At first, he thought it a trick of the eyes, the sun's reflection upon sea spray, perhaps. But the shimmer remained, steady, delicate, pulsing faintly, like a soft heartbeat hidden in the air. It lingered for only moments, then vanished, slipping into the deepening dusk. But it returned the next evening, and the next, always faint, always near the same place, along a narrow, forgotten trail that curved gently toward the westernmost cliffs. And with the shimmer came the hum, the same quiet vibration that threaded through the breeze, low, melodic, like the distant song of voices carried across the waves. It wasn't loud, wasn't urgent, but it tugged at Edrin, soft and steady, and soon he followed. The narrow trail wound along the cliffs, its edges overgrown with sea grasses, small pale flowers blooming along its path, despite the salty air. The shimmer drifted ahead, weaving gently between the rocks. Never far, never close enough to touch, like a lantern guiding a cautious wanderer through the night. Edrin walked slowly, his boots soundless upon the grass, his breath steady as the soft hum deepened, thrumming faintly beneath his ribs. The trail descended toward a small, sheltered cove, a hidden pocket of beach tucked between the cliffs, shielded from the wind. He had never noticed it before. The rocks rose high around it, their surfaces worn smooth by countless tides. A narrow stream trickled down from the hills above, its waters clear and cool, winding softly through the sand before meeting the sea. And there, upon the shore, an object, half buried in the sand, its edges worn by time, yet unmistakably shaped by careful, ancient hands. A stone, carved delicately with spiraling patterns, lines that curled and knotted like waves upon water, and at its center, the faint etching of a ship. Edrin knelt, brushing the sand aside. The stone was cool beneath his fingertips, but as he touched the carved ship, warmth stirred faintly, like sunlight trapped beneath the surface. The hum pulsed softly around him, the shimmer hovering faintly at the edge of sight, the sea whispering its endless song beyond. And in that moment, the world responded. The grasses along the cliffs swayed, though no wind stirred. The water within the small stream rippled, casting strange, unfamiliar reflections. Stars and constellations Edrin had never seen, dancing across its surface as though plucked from forgotten skies. Even the gulls, circling far above, tilted their wings, their cries falling into hushed silence. It was as though the land itself breathed. Edrin's fingers lingered upon the stone, tracing the etched ship, the spiraling lines, the ancient symbols woven carefully into its surface. The hum deepened, not loud, not frightening, but full, rich, like the memory of a song sung long ago, a memory, or perhaps a promise. Edrin sat upon the sand for a long while, the stone resting in his lap, the sea stretching vast and endless before him. He thought of the stories, the old tales whispered by sailors and dreamers, of isles lost beyond the horizon, of places the world had forgotten or chosen to forget. The shimmer drifted softly along the shoreline, its silvery glow fading as the stars blinked awake above. The hum settled into silence once more, and though the cove grew quiet, the invitation remained. Edrin tucked the carved stone gently into his cloak, its warmth lingering faintly. The path home wound gently along the cliffs, the waves whispering below, the stars glowing softly above. He walked slowly, his mind full of gentle wonder, his heart steady beneath the quiet hum that lingered still. The world remembered, the land responded, and Edrin listened. The carved stone rested upon Edrin's small wooden table, its surface cool beneath the soft glow of lantern light. Outside, the sea whispered against the cliffs, the steady pulse of waves rising and retreating like the world's gentle breathing. The windows creaked softly in their frames as the evening breeze curled around the cottage. Edrin's fingers traced the spiraling patterns etched into the stone. The ship at its center, its delicate sails, the careful, ancient knots woven around its edges, all whispered of hands long gone, of stories almost forgotten, but not entirely. The warmth beneath the surface had faded for now, but the hum remained, faint, subtle, threaded through the air like the quiet hum of a far-off shore calling softly beyond the waves. Sleep found him slowly that night, his dreams full of drifting light and the endless blue of the sea. And when dawn stirred softly over the horizon, casting pale light upon the cliffs, Edrin awoke with a steady knowing. Today, he would follow. The carved stone nestled safely within his satchel, his cloak wrapped snugly around him. Edrin set out along the narrow, forgotten trail leading westward along the cliffs. The air was cool and damp with sea spray, the grasses along the path heavy with morning dew. Gulls circled quietly above, their cries soft, as though the day itself leaned gently into stillness. The shimmer returned, drifting softly at the edge of his vision, guiding him along winding paths that curled between rocky outcrops and weathered stones. It led him farther than before, beyond the hidden cove, beyond familiar shores. The cliffs rose high and jagged now, the waves crashing against their base far below, their foamy edges glittering beneath the pale sun. And then the path ended. A sheer wall of stone rose before him, weathered and ancient, its surface streaked with moss and faint markings almost lost to time. At its center, a narrow archway. No door, no hinges, just a dark, quiet passage carved into the cliff itself. The shimmer hovered before it, pulsing faintly, then slipped inside, its silvery glow disappearing into the shadows beyond. Edrin's heart remained steady, the hum beneath his ribs guiding him, patient and sure. He stepped forward. The passage was narrow, the stone cool beneath his fingertips, the air damp with the scent of salt and earth. Soft light filtered from cracks above, illuminating faint carvings along the walls, spirals, knots, and ships, the same patterns woven into the stone he carried. The hum deepened with each step, the air growing still, as though the cliffs themselves held their breath. And then the passage opened. A cavern stretched beyond, hidden deep within the cliffs, its ceiling high and domed, its walls glistening with salt and minerals that shimmered faintly in the muted light. Pools of water reflected the ceiling, their surfaces still as glass, their depths dark and quiet. And at the cavern's center, a circle of standing stones, worn by time, their edges softened by wind and sea, yet unmistakably shaped by ancient hands. Each stone etched with spirals, knots, and ships sailing west. Edrin approached, his footsteps soundless upon the smooth stone floor. As he stepped within the circle, the hum grew steady, full, like the low, distant song of the sea itself. And within him, a quiet knowing blossomed. This was not simply a cave, not a forgotten place lost to time. This was a memory, a place left behind, waiting. The carved stone in his satchel pulsed faintly, its warmth returning, steady and sure. Edrin withdrew it, holding it gently in his palm. The standing stones responded. Faint light shimmered along their carvings, the spirals glowing softly, the ships upon their surfaces seeming to drift along unseen waves. The pools of water rippled, their surfaces shifting, and within their depths, a reflection that was not his own. Isles scattered upon an endless blue sea, green and wild, untouched by time, their shores veiled in mist, their mountains rising softly beyond the clouds. Isles forgotten by map and memory, yet lingering, patient, beyond the horizon. Edrin's breath slowed, his heart steady. This was the first glimpse, not of myth, but of truth. The sea beyond Middle-earth, the Sea of Belegaer, stretched farther than most believed, and upon its distant waters, the forgotten isles drifted still. Waiting, the cavern held its stillness, the standing stones glowing faintly, the hum of memory woven through the air. There was no fear within him, only quiet wonder, and the steady, patient invitation to follow. Edrin remained for a while, his gaze lingering upon the still pools, the isles within their depths, shifting softly like dreams upon water. And when the reflection faded, when the light along the stones dimmed, the hum remained. Soft, steady, woven now through him, the world had offered its first glimpse, and soon he would answer. The steady hum of the sea followed Edrin home, soft and low, like a song carried within him now. His footsteps along the familiar cliff path were quiet, the grass brushing gently against his boots, the waves whispering far below, the sky above deepening into soft twilight. The carved stone nestled warm in his satchel, its pulse faint but steady, a quiet companion to his thoughts. The cavern's memory lingered, the still pools reflecting hidden isles, the ancient standing stones glowing softly filling with forgotten light, the sense of something vast, patient, and quietly waiting. Edrin's mind turned over the vision, slow and careful, as he walked the winding path back to his cottage. By the time he reached his door, the stars had begun to wake, scattering themselves across the darkening sky like distant, gentle watchfires. The small wooden cottage welcomed him with familiar warmth. The low creak of the door, the faint scent of herbs drying by the hearth, the soft crackle of a fresh fire warming the cool evening air. But tonight, the familiar felt changed, not in the way of sudden revelation, but in the quiet, steady way that understanding unfolds, like the tide creeping softly upon the shore, unnoticed at first, but undeniable with time. Edrin moved to the window, pushing it open to the sea breeze. The vast stretch of ocean shimmered beneath the starlight, its waves gentle, its horizon distant and hidden beneath soft mist. And as he stood there, gazing westward, a gentle realization settled within him. The longing he had carried, the quiet ache beneath his ribs, had never been restlessness. It had been memory, a whisper woven not only through the cliffs and tides, but through him, a quiet thread pulling him softly toward what the world had nearly forgotten. The isles beyond the Sea of Belegaer. They were not mere legend, nor simply lost. They waited, and more than that, they called, not with shouts, not with thunder or roaring winds, but with patience, with the steady hum of time itself, with the quiet invitation offered to those who listen. Edrin settled into his chair by the hearth, the carved stone resting in his palm, its surface cool now, but beneath it, the memory remained. His eyes drifted to the shelves along the cottage walls, lined with maps and scrolls collected over the years. Charts of Middle-earth's familiar lands, of mountains, rivers, forests, and of course, of the Western Sea. But the sea always ended the same way on every map, a neat edge, a drawn horizon, as though the world simply stopped. But Edrin knew the world did not stop. The old stories spoke of ships sailing west, of lands beyond sight, of isles hidden by mist and time. And now, the first thread of those stories had found him. He could still hear the hum-hum woven through the cliffs, faint but steady. Could still see the vision upon the pools, the forgotten isles drifting softly upon the waves, untouched, waiting. He thought of the ancient carvings along the cliffside, the spirals, the knots, the ships etched upon stone by hands long gone, all pointing west. And beneath it all, the land itself remembered. It was not merely longing for adventure that stirred him. It was the quiet, ancient knowing that Middle-earth was larger, older, softer in its mysteries than many believed. The stars outside glittered softly, their reflection dancing upon the waves far below. Edrin's gaze lingered westward, his heart steady, his breathing slow. He did not know all the answers yet, but he understood the first piece. The isles beyond the Sea of Belegaer, the forgotten fragments of a world older than kings and kingdoms. They were not lost. They were simply waiting. Waiting for quiet hearts, for steady footsteps, for those willing to listen to the hum beneath the waves and follow. And in that understanding, the ache within him eased. The longing had a name now and a direction, and though the road west was hidden, though the maps failed, though the world whispered of impossibility. Edrin knew the first door had opened, and the journey, gentle and patient, had begun. Your thoughts drift deeper into the peace of Middle-earth. The western cliffs stretched quiet and endless beneath the pale morning sky. The sea rolled below, its waves curling gently against the rocks, the soft hum of the tide weaving through the cool breeze. Edrin's footsteps along the narrow path were slow, steady, the same familiar rhythm he had known all his life. And yet, each step carried him farther along the quiet thread of mystery now softly unraveling before him. The carved stone rested safely in his satchel, its warmth gentle against his side, the memory of the cavern and the hidden aisles lingering within him like the soft echo of a forgotten song. For many days, he walked the cliffs, following paths long lost to most, his eyes searching the shorelines, his ears attuned to the faint hum threaded through the breeze. And it was along one such quiet trail, winding between tall grasses and weathered stones, that he met the first of them. A figure seated upon a smooth boulder near the cliff's edge, their cloak drawn close, their gaze fixed upon the vast horizon beyond. At first glance, they appeared like any weary traveler, but as Edrin approached, his steps soft upon the grass, he saw the quiet knowing in their eyes, the kind of knowing carried only by those who listened to the land, to the sea, to the spaces between things. The figure turned, their features calm, their expression touched by the faintest smile. "You've heard it too," they said, their voice gentle, low, as though they too spoke in rhythm with the steady breathing of the world. Edrin nodded, the carved stone heavy in his satchel, the hum of the cliffs steady beneath his feet. The traveler's cloak fell open, revealing the delicate patterns embroidered along its edges, spirals, knots, and the unmistakable image of ships sailing west. "I've followed the hum for many seasons," the traveler shared, their eyes drifting back to the sea. "Most cannot hear it, but those who do, we find our way to the old roads." Edrin sat beside them, the grass cool beneath him, the wind carrying the faint, familiar scent of salt and memory. The traveler's name was Kalen, a wanderer, not by trade, but by quiet calling. They had left behind the busy towns and tangled markets long ago, drawn, like Edrin, by the faint hum upon the wind, the whispered promise of forgotten things lingering beyond the edges of maps. Together, they shared what they knew, fragments of old stories, half-remembered songs, the careful quad observations only those who listen truly notice. Kalen spoke of others too, wanderers, dreamers, those who walked softly along the hidden roads, drawn by the same gentle pull, all searching, not for treasure, but for the forgotten. Over the days that followed, Edrin and Kalen walked the cliffs together. Their conversations were unhurried, flowing like streams along ancient stones, their silences comfortable, their wonders shared. And then they met another. Along a stretch of the cliffs, where tall, sea-weathered pines grew stubbornly against the salty wind, a third figure appeared. An elf, tall, slender, their dark hair braided with silver threads, their eyes pale as dawn mist. They did not speak at first, but their presence carried the quiet authority of ancient memory, the weightless patience of one who has seen more of the world than words can hold. Edrin and Kalen greeted them with quiet respect, and in time, the elf shared their name, Lindariel. They had not sailed west with the others, not yet. Instead, they remained, walking the hidden places of Middle-earth, watching, remembering, and waiting for those who still listened. Lindariel carried stories, woven like music into the hush of their voice. Tales of the First Age, of ships that sailed beyond the Sundering Seas, of lands lost to mortal memory, drifting upon the endless blue, hidden by the veils of time and sea. The firelight of their small camp upon the cliffs flickered gently as they spoke beneath the stars, their words flowing like ancient rivers returning to their quiet source. The forgotten isles drift still, Lindariel shared, their gaze turned west, beyond the edge of sight, beyond the reach of most. Edrin listened, the carved stone warm in his palm, the hum steady beneath his ribs. Few remember them, the elf continued softly. Fewer still follow. But they, Edrin, Kalen, Lindariel, they had followed, and in their gentle, unspoken trust, they became quiet companions upon the old road, their steps guided not by urgency, but by patience, by wonder. The days flowed gently, their journey winding along the cliffs, their conversations weaving fragments of lore into the soft rhythm of their walk. Together, they were seekers, not of conquest, not of coin, but of memory, of understanding, of the ancient, steady truth that the world still held forgotten corners, if one only listened. And as the waves whispered far below, and the land breathed steady and sure, Edrin understood. He was not alone upon this quiet road, and the forgotten isles, the hidden threads of Middle-earth's memory, they were closer than ever. The cliffs rested quiet beneath the stars, their edges softened by the silver glow of moonlight, the sea far below whispering its steady song against the rocks. The small campfire crackled gently, its warmth curling around the three figures seated upon smooth stones near the cliff's edge. Edrin, Kalen, and Lindariel sat close, their cloaks drawn against the cool night breeze, their eyes lifted toward the vast sky, where ancient constellations glittered softly, unchanged through the long turning of years. It was here, beneath the hush of the stars, that the stories began to flow, not loudly, not hurriedly, but as they always have upon quiet nights, woven softly between companions, shared in fragments, carried on the gentle rhythm of wonder. Lindariel's voice drifted first, steady and low, as though drawn directly from the slow, ancient breathing of the land itself. Long before the seas were sundered, they began, before the elves sailed west, before the world was bent, the isles drifted freely upon the wide, open waters. Edrin and Kalen listened, the firelight painting soft gold upon their faces, their eyes steady with quiet patience. The elves called them the Forgotten Jewels, Lindariel continued, though in truth they were never truly forgotten, not by the world, only by the hearts that ceased to look. They spoke of ships, sleek, white-sailed vessels that once sailed beyond the familiar shores of Middle-earth, carrying dreamers, wanderers, and those whose longing could not be silenced. Of isles that floated far upon the sea, some small as a hillock, others vast as kingdoms. Their shores were wrapped in mist, their forests thick with ancient trees, untouched by axe or fire. And of the straight road, the hidden path beyond the world's curve, where ships sailed westward, never to return, their sails lost beyond the sunset. Edrin listened, his gaze upon the sea, the carved stone warm in his lap, its etched ship glowing faintly beneath the moonlight. Kaelin spoke next, their voice softer, touched by memory. In my childhood, they shared, my grandmother told of such places. She would speak of an isle beyond the tides, where the stars touch the water, where the land remembers. They smiled faintly, the firelight catching the quiet ache in their eyes. I never believed her, not fully, but still, when the wind hummed just right, when the sea whispered upon the shore, I wondered. Edrin nodded, the same quiet wonder threading through his own heart, his longing no longer aimless, but gently anchored by the truths shared tonight. The fire crackled softly as the stories wove on. Lindariel spoke of Numenor, the mighty isle lost to pride and sea, the fading of its towers beneath the waves, the sorrow carried upon the tides even now. They spoke, too, of those who did not follow kings or conquest, but the quiet pull westward, those who sailed with only longing as their compass. The land remembers, Lindariel whispered, their eyes reflecting the stars. The sea carries memory, and those isles drift still, beyond sight, but never truly beyond reach. The night deepened, the constellations wheeling slowly overhead, the world quiet save for the hush of waves and the soft, steady breathing of the earth. Edrin leaned back upon the grass, the sky vast above him, the stories lingering within him like the fading glow of the fire, the forgotten isles, the ancient ships, the whispered songs of those who followed longing westward, all wove gently through his heart now, not as mere legend, but as steady, patient truth. The sea, the land, the sky, they remembered, and beneath the hush of the stars, so did he. The days that followed their quiet night, beneath the stars, passed with patient steadiness. Edrin, Kaelin, and Lindariel walked the western cliffs together, their steps unhurried, their conversations low and drifting, their eyes always drawn westward, to the sea and to the memory of forgotten things waiting beyond. The carved stone remained with Edrin, its warmth steady, its faint hum a quiet companion beneath his ribs. The ancient patterns etched upon its surface whispered softly of the isles, of hidden roads, of truths not lost, but gently set aside, waiting for those who listen. And so they followed the path. It wound along the cliffs, over hills thick with sea grasses and wildflowers, through patches of pine that clung stubbornly to the rocky earth. Each turn of the path, each gentle curve, led them closer, not only to the sea, but to something older, something the world had tucked away, patient as the tides themselves. It was on the 7th day that they found it. A break in the cliffs, a narrow ravine carved by time and water, hidden from careless eyes, its edges softened by moss and creeping vines. The hum deepened as they approached. It threaded through the air, woven between the rocks, drifting upon the sea breeze like the low, steady song of the earth itself. Without words, they descended. The path wound gently downward, the stone cool beneath their fingertips, the air growing thick with the scent of salt and ancient places. And then, the world opened. A sheltered bay stretched before them, its waters calm as glass, its shore curved gently between two towering cliffs that rose like guardians upon either side. But it was not the bay alone that stilled their breath. Beyond the shore, hidden within the mist that curled across the waves, drifted shapes. At first, faint, shadows upon the water, but as the mist parted, their forms took shape. Ships, dozens of them, some small as fishing vessels, others vast as city streets, their sails furled, their hulls crafted from pale wood that gleamed softly beneath the diffused light. They floated quietly upon the bay, anchored in stillness, untouched by time, their decks empty, yet their presence heavy with memory. And beyond them, upon the horizon, the faint, unmistakable silhouettes of distant isles. Isles green and wild, their shores hidden by soft fog, their mountains rising beyond the clouds, their forests thick with ancient trees that whispered softly even from afar. The forgotten isles, adrift upon the Sea of Belegaer, not lost, not gone, but waiting. The hum pulsed through Edrin now, steady and sure, echoing within his chest, weaving through his limbs, rooting him gently to the earth beneath his boots. Kaelin's breath caught softly beside him. Lindariel's eyes shone faintly, touched by quiet knowing. And as they stood upon the shore, the sea stretching vast before them, the truth settled upon them, not with grand revelation, but with soft, steady certainty. The isles had never truly vanished. The world had not forgotten them. It had only hidden them, set them beyond the edge of careless maps, behind veils of mist and patience, waiting for the time when quiet hearts, steady footsteps, and wondering eyes would seek them once more. The ships in the bay had waited too, silent, anchored, untouched, their hulls weathered, their sails at rest, their purpose fulfilled not in grand voyages, but in the simple, quiet act of waiting. Lindariel stepped forward first. Their hand brushed the carved patterns upon the nearest ship's hull, spirals, knots, the same familiar etchings that marked Edrin's stone, that marked the standing stones upon the cliffs. It was not for kings or warriors, Lindariel whispered, their voice soft, steady. The isles, they were kept for memory, for those who listened. Edrin stepped to the water's edge, the waves cool upon his boots, the carved stone warm in his palm. The hum deepened, the mist parted further, and beyond the bay, the isles drifted still. The trees upon their slopes swayed, though no wind stirred. The mountains upon their peaks shimmered faintly beneath the clouds. And the land itself breathed. It was not a call to action, not a demand for conquest, but an invitation, steady, patient, woven through the quiet breathing of the sea and stone. The invitation to remember, to honor the forgotten, to walk softly along the hidden road that the world, in its quiet wisdom, had set aside. Edrin closed his fingers around the carved stone, his heart steady, his mind clear. They would not rush. The Isles had waited generations. They would wait a little longer. And so they remained upon the shore. Edrin, Kalin, Lindariel, three quiet souls, bound not by loud proclamations, but by shared wonder, by patient steps, by the understanding that some truths, some places, some memories are not meant to be seized, but to be approached gently and remembered. The mist rolled softly across the bay. The ships drifted, anchored but ready. The Isles lingered upon the horizon, hidden yet present, distant yet close as a whispered song. And beneath it all, the hum of the world wove steadily on. The forgotten isles of Middle-earth, lost beyond the Sea of Belegaer, no longer forgotten. And for Edrin, for those who followed the quiet road, the journey, steady and gentle, had only just begun. The bay rested quiet beneath the deepening sky. The ships upon the still water drifted without sound, their pale hulls glinting faintly in the last light, their sails furled, patient as the tides themselves. The forgotten isles lingered beyond the mist, their green slopes and hidden shores untouched by time, waiting, as they always had. Edrin stood by the water's edge, the carved stone warm in his hand, the faint hum of the earth steady beneath his boots. The sea whispered softly, its voice woven with old songs, with stories carried upon the waves long before memory began. And within him, the ache of longing had softened. It had not vanished, but it had settled, gentle now, replaced by the quiet understanding that the world, in all its vastness, still held its forgotten corners, its hidden songs, its patient truths. The journey was not finished. The road west stretched still, winding softly through veils of mist and over unseen waters toward isles adrift upon the edge of the world. But for now, there was no need to hurry. The isles had waited generations. They would wait a little longer. The sea, the cliffs, the hum beneath the earth, all whispered of patience, of stillness, of remembering. And so, Edrin remained by the water, his heart full, his steps steady, his gaze resting softly upon the distant shapes beyond the horizon. The world breathed slow and quiet. The sky above deepened to velvet blue, scattered with gentle stars, old and steady, watching over the sea as they always had. The waves lapped at the shore, their rhythm slow, calming, carrying the listener now, softly, gently, toward sleep. The fire crackled low beside the camp. The grasses swayed faintly, the hush of the night folding gently around the cliffs. And as you lie there now, your body heavy with rest, your breathing slow, the story lingers within you. The forgotten isles, the hidden hum of the world, the soft promise that wonder still waits for those who listen. And sleep, too, waits now. Close your eyes, breathe deep, and drift softly, like a quiet ship upon the still waters, toward peaceful dreams, toward the forgotten corners of Middle-earth, where memory breathes, where the land remembers, where you are safe and at peace. Good night, sleep well.